Buenas tardes, bienvenidos. I'm Joana Sanchez. I'm the Spanish representative for CELTIC Next, and I'm representing the CDTI and the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Universities. Welcome to Spain, welcome to Valencia. Welcome to this space. I hope you are enjoying the a little bit hot weather. And well, I would like to tell you some words about the position of Spain in the EuRECA. You know that CELTIC is one of the clusters at the EuRECA program. And CELTIC specifically is the program that is focused on telecommunications. This is becoming a more and more interesting area for Spanish participants. And Spain has been a supportive full member of CELTIC on the 3 editions of this cluster. First on CELTIC, after in CELTIC Plus, and now in CELTIC Next. As I said, the international cooperation has become more and more interesting for Spanish participants. And from the public administration, we are working on trying to give the best conditions for participants to get closer and closer to this kind of programs. Specifically in CELTIC, that is, for us, is a perfect and a very good framework for participants to present their project ideas, to cooperate with other partners in Europe and also outside Europe, and with the whole support from the technical office of this cluster and, of course, from the public authorities. We are very proud that Spain is placed on the first positions on a number of projects running and number of projects presenting. So the interest in Spain is quite high. The potential of Spanish participants, of the companies in Spain, is quite high. And we also evaluate very much, we give value to the cooperation between research and close to market development. Yesterday, we could see a very interesting demo of EuCNC project that was placed here in Valencia. So we could see a perfect combination between research and close to market development. We could see how research is oriented to improve the state of the art, and companies, SMEs and large companies that are more focused on commercialize their project ideas could work in a perfect combination with a very good result. I would like to highlight that in Spain we are working from the public administration in a new strategy, an R&D, and artificial intelligence, I was thinking in Spanish, artificial intelligence is becoming a very key point for us. So this is something that is fitting very well, it fits very well with the strategy of CELTIC. CELTIC has a very concrete strategic line on IA that could fit very well with our objectives in this moment on international cooperation. Another thing I would like to highlight is that we are working with regional organisms in Spain in order to give the best conditions to Spanish participants to find the best way of funding their project ideas in Spain. So, from my side, welcome. I wish you a very good day, a very fruitful event today and tomorrow, and all of us will be around here to help you in any doubt you have. Thank you very much.
Okay, now I'm asking Valerie to come to the stage. Valerie is the new chair lady of CELTIC. She's succeeding Jacques Magin, and she will do now the welcome on behalf of CELTIC. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Joana, for your kind words and your great support from Spain. We know that you're achieving a lot for Spanish participants in CELTIC projects, so thanks a lot for that. Yes, so welcome everybody to this CELTIC event. So We will have a very interesting afternoon. We will have a great presentation on the future of networks by Eric Ardouin, or the Orange Research Director for Ambient Connectivity. We'll have a panel on the impact of CELTIC projects. And also, even if there is a coffee break in between, don't rush after coffee breaks, because there will be a lot of other interesting things afterwards, including keynote speech of SME, but also of Telefonica, about what actually Joanna mentioned, the application of AI to the networks. And we will have also our award ceremony to our successful projects. So please stay with us until the end. So also, if you would like to tweet about what you hear this afternoon, don't hesitate to use the hashtag Celtic event. And yes, that's the program that you see now. Just one announcement, in case you would have a problem that a presentation or pictures from this event would be made available on the website. Personally, just mention it to our office director, so that this is not happening, but most of the time it is very useful for people, either for people participating to this event or people not being able to attend, but would like to have to see what was presented there. So I would like to welcome now Eric Ardouin, so a colleague of mine, since I am from Orange, will talk about the future of network. So please welcome Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Valérie. Thank you for inviting me. So I will provide our vision about the future networks. And for those of you who attended the panel this morning at EuCNC, that will be the long version. So by future, we mean 2025 and beyond. We think that we hear a lot about 6G research these days. And part of this may be realized by 6G timeframe, so from 2030, from a commercial perspective. But we think also that that's very unclear, and we hope that part of this vision will also become true for 5G evolutions. Okay, so first thing that we need to ask ourselves when we think about future technologies, what are the needs that this technology should answer? And of course, we have a lot of challenges in front of us from the human perspective. We all know about the environmental effect of our activity. And of course, networks can help to mitigate those environmental effects. But networks also need to be mindful about the natural resources, and in particular the energy. So as an industry, we have a responsibility here. The second thing is that we know that the Earth population is growing, and we need to feed all this population. So we need to have efficient agriculture. We need also, that's also related to the environmental impact, because with better technology, we can also reduce the amount of chemicals which are used for pest control, for instance. And the networks have a role to play there. And the same goes also for industries, of course, on a different note. But we need to be more and more efficient, more and more have a better productivity at lower cost. And we know that in 5G we have engaged in such a path of having closer relationships with factories, with different industries, with automotive and so on. And this is something that is very good. And we need to continue into this direction. Of course, then we also have all the public services, the cities, the communities. We will also benefit from 5G for more efficient traffic management, for instance, waste collection, and so on. And this will continue in the future. Of course, all of this will put more constraints onto the networks, because the society will be more and more dependent on technology. So that technology needs to be highly secure. So we hear a lot of noise, or a lot of interest these days in the press about sovereignty issues, security issues, and that's justified, of course. But this will be also a very important stake in the future. And finally, maybe less important compared to the previous ones, but we need also to free as much as possible the people from all the tasks that can be automated. And when people are free, they need to be entertained, you know. So and networks also clearly can provide some more diverse or some new ways of entertainment. And we all have examples in mind, and that will also grow into the future. But these are the directions that we see becoming more and more important in the future. They are already important today, but their importance will grow in the years to come. And those ones are clearly identified. But still, there are many others that we don't know at the moment. But still, the technology that we are preparing today needs to be able to account for those new elements that will appear in the future. That means that we need to have a technology which is flexible enough to be able to accommodate new needs, new requirements, and new technology. And 5G has been designed with that spirit, and it should be the same when we think about its evolutions and also some possible new technologies that may come beyond 5G. So talking about the network's evolutions now, some of them are quite clear. I mentioned some of them about my earlier slide. Today, networks are already an essential part of our society, our daily lives. Tomorrow it will become worse, if I can say so, because we will have more and more industries, hospitals, smart grids, cars that will rely on connectivity to work at their best capability. So that calls for a high trust, a high dependability on the networks, because of course a failure will generate dramatic consequences. And one particular aspect that will become also more and more important into the future is that networks will be made of different parts, and each part may be owned by a different stakeholder. So we will have operators, but we will have also, if you think about a factory, for instance, using 5G for processing the assembly line, part of the equipment may also belong to the factory. And in that situation, the end-to-end network behavior will depend on the factory equipment owned by the factory owner, the operator equipment owned by the operator, but still the end-to-end security will need to be achieved. And, and that will be, of course, more difficult to achieve because there will be a need for some coordination between different stakeholders, and also to have a technology that can have a guaranteed correct functioning and security across different domains owned by different stakeholders. So we think that this is very important evolution, and that there are a lot of room for innovation in this field. Another big evolution is that in most of the European countries, we have now a large population coverage. We have some countries on our orange footprint in Europe where we are at 95 point something % of the population in terms of coverage. So the next challenge for us is the coverage, is the territory coverage, to cover areas where there are not many people, sometimes no people, but we have like agriculture, or we have some specific industrial assets, like some, how do you call that, power plants. And so that's a challenge, and that's an economic challenge, because as you know, deploying networks, deploying radio sites, deploying backhaul costs a lot. So we need there to think about new deployment models. So we already do a lot of network sharing between operators, but probably that to cover some particularly remote areas, we will need to do something else. Maybe sharing the cost with the industry or the agriculture that will need that coverage. Anyway, we need to imagine there are some innovative solutions to find the money to deploy the right networks. Also, you know that we are in the telecom industry on the edge of massive evolution of the way we deploy networks, which is the virtualization. Because so far we were deploying networks as hardware boxes with dedicated software running on those boxes, and all of them being supplied by the same vendor. And with the virtualization, we will deploy IT servers with virtualized network functions running on those servers. So for us operators, that is a big change because we will need to completely redesign the way we deploy networks. Networks will be software-based. Of course, we will still have physical fiber, physical antennas, but many of our functions will run as software. That will open a lot of new opportunities, but also we need to, as operator, to learn how to operate such a new network. When it comes to business proposition, because we will have an IT infrastructure that will be distributed across our footprints, we will be able to offer, of course, connectivity, networking, but also some new services based on cloud, because when we have servers distributed on the territory, you can also offer local storage, local data storage. You can also host applications, possibly from third parties, to provide some services to different customers, potentially industrial customers, or also public customers, or even consumers, individual consumers. So that opens a lot of new business propositions for operators. One point that we don't talk about often is the exposure to electromagnetic fields. You know that there is a lot of regulation on that topic, and when we deploy networks, we need to comply, of course, with those regulations. There are limits which are fixed that we are not allowed to go over. But the situation is that we have different regulations from European to national to local, and some cities have adopted particularly aggressive such limitations in Europe, which makes it already very challenging to deploy 5G in those cities. So we need to, we are at the moment thinking about how we will manage. So obvious solutions are to reduce a lot the transmit power, but then there will be coverage issues. Other solutions are to deploy small cells, which incurs a lot of additional cost. And so we think that one important direction for the future in terms of research is to integrate the EMF problematic from the outset of the design of new technology. And I will provide some examples of how we can have some technology that allow to significantly reduce the EMF exposure later in my talk. Another extremely important aspect, which I touched a bit in the previous slide, is all the environmental impact of our industry. And with 5G, we have integrated the need to reduce the power consumption of the networks. And we have integrated some features in the interface design to be able to turn off as much as we can the radio equipments when there is no traffic in the cell. And there is still some room for improvement there, in particular when we think about artificial intelligence to manage those, what we call sleep modes, or also in terms of implementation, innovative cooling solutions, for instance, to reduce the energy consumption of base station and so on and so on. But this is really an important effort that we need to take on this domain. Because when we talk about adding new frequencies, adding new radio sites, each time it means we will increase the power consumption. And at some point, of course, first it costs a lot in terms of operational fees, but in addition, it creates a lot of problems for the environment. So we need to find solutions to reduce as much as we can the energy consumption of the network. And we really need to have a strong initiative in this domain. And taking the environmental impact with a more broader view, we need also to consider all the resource, the natural resource use when it comes to producing equipments for networks. And you know that networks use a lot of earth materials, which are quite rare and costly to extract. So we need also that there is a need to take into account the need for recycling those equipments when they are removed from the operation in order to be able to reuse those materials and to limit the need for such new material in the future. And the last point is about digital inclusion. Today, we still have a lot of people on Earth which are not connected to the internet because there is no network, there's no coverage. And the reason why there's no coverage in those areas, which are particularly in Africa or in India as well, is that the populations, they don't have enough revenue to support the deployment of a network. And of course, that's not only a technological problem, but technology can help there by reducing the cost of the network. Of course, not to provide maybe gigabit per second, as 5G will do in developed countries, but at least to provide a basic internet access. So a few megabits per second, enough to do video, for instance, but still at a much reduced cost compared to what we deploy in Europe. And that's true for providing connectivity when there is no connectivity, but there is another dimension, which is that even in our developed countries, you have some people who don't have access to internet, either because they have no money or because they don't know how to use the technology. So there is a need there for also works on, for instance, simpler interfaces to help elderly to use smartphones, for instance, and also certainly for some public policies to reduce this digital divide. Because you may know that in some countries you cannot anymore fill some paper form for administrative requests, for instance. You need to do everything online. So when you don't know how to use a computer, then you're in big trouble. So this leads to our vision for the future networks, so which is around providing pervasive connectivity, but not only connectivity, also computing power, because as I said before, the way we see networks in the future are that they will provide, of course, networking functionalities, but also some distributed cloud functionalities. The number of connected objects will rise, that's for sure, and with very specific constraints in terms of security, reliability, latency as well, and all those objects, they will need to be able to be managed by the networks. We will have a huge amounts of data that will be processed and transported on our networks. And there also we need to do that in an intelligent manner, because the traffic is already huge today. It will increase further. We have about 60% of traffic increase per year. But we will not have necessarily, we don't have this amount of spectrum increase, for instance, which means that we will need to find smart ways of coping with this need for more capacity. And there is a lot of research that needs to be done on that field. Security, dependability, trust in multi-tenant environment, I thought about that already, EMF as well, energy efficiency. One point I did not address is the need for networks, future networks, to be CapEx friendly. You know that it costs a lot of money to deploy networks, and revenues, at least in Europe, are not growing, to say that this way, which means that in the future we need also, when doing research for the future technology, we need to have in mind that we need to avoid as much as possible to have to deploy new sites. Reusing all what we have already is the best way to reduce the CapEx. So these are very important messages that need to be conveyed to our research community. So now to be a bit more technical, here are some examples of candidate techniques which can help to solve those challenges. So the ones which are in orange, I have some dedicated slides on that, so I will come back to that later. Among the other techniques, we hear more and more about artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is already used in our networks today for network management, for instance, but it is expected to take more and more importance in the future. In particular, we expect, or at least there is research at the moment, on how to define air interfaces based on artificial intelligence, which means that you, in the ideal vision, you would not have anymore a modulator, a channel coder, and a decoder, demodulator. At the other end, you would have just a deep neural network that would be able to learn the channel, the modulation, the coding, and so on, and to just demodulate the signal without knowing the way it has been modulated at the transmitter. So this is a research area, of course. It's not for today, not even for tomorrow, but these are the things that could improve the spectrum efficiency. Radar sensing is also one field of research which is quite appealing. The idea here is to use the radio waves to detect people, movements, or objects, but to have a radar, a local radar functionality. This is something that exists already today. There are some startups developing such products on Wi-Fi that allows to detect that you have people in the room, and if take babies, for instance, that babies, they are breathing correctly, and that you can do today. But in the future, when you will go into a higher frequency spectrum, then there is a possibility to have a much higher resolution, which means being able to detect finer movements, which can open a lot of new applications. So far, the devices are not, I mean, they are part of the network, of course, but they are not used as much as they could be. So we think also that when considering the future, the devices are called to play a more important role as an infrastructure element, like relaying communication, for instance, to help improving the coverage inside the buildings. That's one example. Or offloading the macro network to increase the capacity. That's another example. And there has been a lot of work on device-to-device communication. But one area of work which has not been explored so much is the device as a cloud infrastructure element. And that also, using caching in the device, combined with D2D, it has been investigated in research, but it has not been considered so much for practical use. And we think that there is also there a room for improvement of the technology. Then regarding spectrum efficiency, we think that we can improve it by leveraging on the growing computing power in the devices, by using more advanced signal processing, more advanced receivers, more advanced MIMO at the transmitter as well. And finally, regarding the cloud, we think that there is some room for benefits by making the network more aware about the applications, and conversely, to make the applications also more aware about the network capabilities. And this will allow applications to provide a better user experience and also hopefully to consume less resources from the networks. So now let's dig a little bit more into some specific topics. So terahertz spectrum, that was the first one on my list, which I will now introduce a little bit more. So terahertz spectrum in practice address the spectrum which is above 100 gigahertz. It's very high. There is a lot of free spectrum there, but of course it poses a lot of challenges in terms of how you will do the transmission, how you will even model the channel, because of course before doing any type of algorithm design, you need to have a good understanding about the propagation properties, and also about the hardware implementation, how much it will cost. There are a lot of questions in this area. So there are already a number of projects funded by the European Union. There are 6 projects which are currently ongoing to try to progress on those questions. Orange is leading one of them, which is called Vortex. And we will have some first proof of concept this year. So this is a field which is promising, but we have started to investigate, but there are still a lot of research which is needed to really have a clear idea about what we can do with this spectrum. So I told you that we have some ideas about how we can reduce the EMF exposure. So this is what we call a spatial focusing. You all know what MIMO is, so that's the same idea, except that there you have distributed antennas into the environment. And let me replay the animation. So the way it works is that the device transmits some pilot signals, which are received, of course, by the infrastructure antennas. And then the idea is that you replay that signal inversely, in such a way that you create really a high power just where the terminal is and nothing around. And that's the principle of having some constructive interference, if you want, exactly at the terminal. And with classical MIMO, you have a high power in the beam that you create. But if you have the proper environment or the proper antennas distribution, you can achieve that without having a strong energy, without having any beam, basically. You just have a high power peak in particular location and nothing around. So we have made some proof of concepts of this. You can find references in the slide. And of course, that's probably not usable in any conditions. But if you think about dense urban environments, for instance, which is where we have problems with the EMF limits, that can be a solution. Another quite interesting area where Orange has worked a lot is what we call ambient backscattering. So the idea here is to communicate without transmitting energy. So basically you reuse the energy which is already present because sent by either the base stations or TV transmitters. So you reuse the waves which are already there, but you can still modulate them. Of course, that's short range communication. So you can modulate them to transmit information. So the way it works is that you have a radio wave source, and you have just a dipole with a switch in the middle. And when the switch is open, nothing happens. When the switch is closed, then you create perturbation into the signal. And so the device can detect whether there is perturbation or no perturbation. So no perturbation, it's a 0, perturbation, it's a 1, and so on. So then you can transmit binary messages this way. So we run a number of experiments. So on that picture, it's in the TGV, so the French high-speed train, where we were using the TV waves and the 4G waves, and we showed that it works. We can transmit some small, low-resolution images. If some of you were at Infocom in Paris a few months ago, you could also see a demo there. So this has been done in the framework of a national French project. And you have the list of the partners here. That's also a promising technique. And now we are working on how we can extend the range of this. And one important point also is that it can help to save energy because you don't have to transmit energy. Those devices are really low power and they are sufficiently low power so that they can be powered by some energy, some solar panels, some small solar panel. We did experiment on that too. So you can have a device that is fully autonomous when it comes to energy. So to conclude, in our view, beyond performance aspects that will be, of course, extremely important in the future in terms of capacity, data rates, lower latency, high reliability, and so on, it's very important to take into account also the aspects of trust and the resilience of the networks, in particular in multi-tenant environment, because we think that that will be the future. And of course, this is because networks are moving to embracing more and more critical applications for which, when or if there is a failure, that will have a significant impacts. We need also to work on EMF-aware technologies. And we provided one example, which is this distributed MIMO. Energy and natural resource usage efficiency is extremely important for the future. And we think that even if in 5G we have taken that into account from the beginning of the design of 5G, we didn't do enough. And it really needs to be a strong research direction for the future. And the last one is the digital inclusion that we in Orange, we have pushed a lot for 5G, but we didn't have much success, we have to say, unfortunately. But now we see more and more initiatives globally around this. And so we hope that it will make its way, and hopefully hopefully before 6G, hopefully in the years to come. Now, I would like also to stress the fact that even if those topics are quite long-term research, we should not forget more mid-term research, because we still need to do a lot of research to deliver the full 5G promise. The 5G foundation is very good, and we can do a lot to improve it for future 5G evolutions in like 3 to 4 years. So in terms of research, we should not put all our eggs in the same basket, and we need really to work with different horizons. And my last point is that we see now that the communication systems are more and more complex. We have a lot of different features which are working, which are really intertwined. So if and having very efficient blocks is not sufficient if in the end, when they are integrated into one system, the system don't behave nicely. So it's better to have average performing individual blocks, but a great system than having great blocks and which don't match well to provide good end-to-end performance. That means that when we do research, we need to take into account the system level aspects also quite fast. I mean, of course, at the beginning, you work on individual technologies, but quite rapidly, we need to think in terms of system and having an efficient system. And one thing that can help us to achieve that is to rely on the test beds that are being prepared, especially in Europe, in the ICT 17 and ICT 17 project, like 5GE, for instance, where Orange is a participant. We will have those test beds, which are open based on open source, and that allows us to test very quickly research results and implement them on the field, to test them in close to real-world environment, and all of this at moderate cost, because you can set up experiments having only all the functions running on a PC, a standard PC, and with some RF cards and antennas that you can buy for a few thousands of euros. So it's an affordable cost. And I will stop here. Thank you very much.
We have time perhaps for one or two quick questions, if there are any questions for Eric. Or was everything wonderfully clear? We have a question in the back on the right. If you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Very interesting. Some governments have set targets for zero net carbon footprints. UK, for example, last week for 2050. And if you consider how much connectivity is going to underpin all of industry more and more, it's hard to see how that's going to happen without some kind of targets for the telecoms industry. So you talked a lot about the energy footprints. Do you think we should be setting targets on a decade level in terms of net zero footprint from networks?
Probably. In Orange, we are currently establishing our long-term strategic plan, and we are having some thoughts about which target we should fix to ourselves. So this is an ongoing process, so I don't have the decision, but we have that type of thoughts in the company at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
And it will be announced by the end of the year, in principle.
Okay. Any more questions? Thoughts? If not, then thank you very much, Eric. Very clear presentation. We'll move on to the next part of the agenda. I'm going the wrong way in the presentation, am I? Yes. Okay, we'll now move into the panel session. I'm David Kennedy of EuCNC. EuCNC has the honour of hosting the CELTIC office, and I'd like to invite my panel members to join me up here, please. Marco Mattavelli from EPFL in Switzerland, Emmanuel Dotaro, I did see him somewhere, he is here, from Thales in France, Antonio Cuedra from Indre in Spain, Jose Costa, who sounds like a native Finnish guy, all right, and Izil Özkan from Turkcell in Turkey. Thank you. Okay, the panel, the discussion is going to be a little bit of an exploration of the value that people are finding in the CELTIC projects. We've asked each panel member to prepare a short opening statement on how they have gained experience from their projects and what value they found in them. And we'll run through those 5 statements and then we'll have a general discussion. Depending on the level of excitement, we might invite a question or two after each individual statement, otherwise we'll move on to the panel discussion straight away. So, without delay, can I ask Marco to please, you can have the podium, or do you want to make it from your chair? You'll go from there. Okay. Marco.
Yes, it works. Thank you. So, just a few words about the experience that we went through in our project. Our project was 4K reprocess, so the goal of the project was to build the full infrastructure to produce 4K Ultra HD TV signals for both indoor and outdoor and iMobile events. So the challenge was to identify what were the building technologies that could help to build such infrastructure and to develop the ones that were not able to produce and to have the performances that are necessary to have a full 4K operativity with full IP interconnectivity and integrating all the systems so that everything can work with image protection, the possibility to introduce personalized advertisement, and everything that was able to produce on-site but also remotely. So it's challenging because we know that all the systems are getting very complex. We cannot develop everything. We have to rely on existing technological building block, and the challenge is how to identify the building blocks that instead we need to build ourselves because they do not satisfy the stringent requirements or the performance requirements of the different use cases. So the challenge of the project was in fact a kind of continuous process in terms of understanding what were the technological choices that were correct. They were still satisfying the also evolving requirement of the customers and of the new use cases, and assessing whether it was reachable within the time frame of the project. So more specifically, at the beginning, we were aiming to have full software operativity for both software radio, so modulation, and signal processing, so HEVC, video compression and decompression. But unfortunately, the processing platform were not able to achieve the necessary increase that for K Ultra HD was requiring. So we have still to stick with IC technology to keep the latency and the power dissipation low so that we could operate with batteries, and as well the processing power that was needed for that. But for the rest, we were happy to see that what we thought with an advance of 4 years were the requirements and the use case that were needed to be satisfied, we could satisfy with the technology that were identified and used in the project. And just to conclude, to say that these kind of activities needs a critical mass, so needs to have a European project that puts together different countries and the best partner we can put together, and also a flexible framework in which during the project we can change and redirect the objective with the help of the directorate that approves the changes and let us go in the right direction that we have ratified according to what we have found in the process of developing the work.
Okay. Just to make sure everyone's on the same page, we're discussing now the set of CELTIC projects and the value that people have got from them. Your point, if I get it correctly, is that the project was able to be run in such a flexible, constructive way that as the requirements evolved, you were able to tailor the project to continue to focus on what was the valuable result.
Yes, and to keep the main objective in focus and being able to accomplish it.
Okay, so one of the special values of the CELTIC projects to you was the fact that the project could adapt to the evolving situation. Very good. Okay, if you can pass the microphone along, we'll move to our second panel member, Emmanuel Dotaro. Emmanuel.
So, hello everybody. I will try to give you a summary of the flagship SUNDET project. So maybe some of all to give you some dimension of this project, it was about 70 million, 93 partners. So
small project.
It's a small project. Fortunately divided in 5 pillars in terms of governance and organization. But we had the unique opportunity, I guess, if you look at the other collaborative projects, to have at the same place people coming from the data centers, so the really culture of the cloud, people coming from the optical networks, people coming from the SDN and AV networks, and people coming from security. So it was very interesting, just by construction, to have those people in the same place and to share some views. And the topic was, as a common interest, was to study building blocks, which it was not called 5G at that time, but basically it's components, foundation of 5G, both from physical layer to the software layers. And also considering the criticity and the critical components in this area. And I would like CELTIC program to give the opportunity to build this type of project in quite light way compared to others, with limited overhead, and to be able to push quite early some concepts and ideas, because at that time I personally pushed software-defined security. We'll talk a bit on that later on, but it was not as ready as today. I mean, talking security in 5G today is very easy because everybody seems to be concerned right now, but 4 or 5 years ago it was not the case. So we had this opportunity to study and to make some de-risking, share the state of the art with various angles, with the various communities, which is really a chance, and have collaborative work on that. And I can I think we can claim that we arrived to a converged vision in terms of architecture, including the architecture on the security. So we have some reference document on that, like many projects, but we shared this with all the projects, and I guess it was a very great achievement to have this as a reference. And just to give you, before spreading a bit the security, we had the opportunity to push that much beyond the limits of the CELTIC project. We reuse that in the framework of the security working group of 5G in some 5G PPP work groups, and also some discussions with the hot topics with the Commission on the 5G security. And also in the framework of the pure cybersecurity project, ICT03 pilot projects, where we are pushing not exactly the same topics, but things that are coming from the work we have done in Sundet. So just to make you, in short, I don't know how familiar you are with security, but just to understand that the systems that we were talking about, and Eric talked about the complexity of the system, and it's a very good point. You cannot secure the new systems, the virtualization, dynamics of software registration, and so on, as we did before. So the security has to be deployed in a concomitant way as you deploy the networking functions. So it's a brand new way to approach security, and that's what we call software-defined security. So it works both for protection, classical security function, but also detection of attacks and things that you have to put in place in order to protect this new infrastructure with the new properties. Another point is very important is that if we want to deliver security, and it was part of the work we have done in Sundet, is to deliver the security function as a service, like in the cloud. So if you want to manage your keys, your identity management, you can have one expert guy in each and every enterprise, millions of enterprises in Europe, or you can deliver it from remotely, from the cloud. So if you want to scale up in Europe, you're obliged to do it remotely. So you are, and we had the opportunity to explore this, and I guess we will talk about that for years, because it's a way we continue to go in Europe. So maybe just to conclude, I don't know how much time I took. This was really great to have this opportunity with Sundet to work on not responding to a call, to be honest, just pushing ideas that, because we felt that it was important at that time to secure all the basic components of the 5G, virtualization, security, even the physical layers, the optical physical layers, and to deliver on those directions in this project, big project, as you have seen. So, and I guess it was a very good one, and I hope that we will have the opportunity to redo this type of project in the future.
Very good, thank you. One question. Was it necessary to have that large scale of project in order to achieve the consensus on the security approach?
Or by definition, if you want consensus, you have to have a wide basis. So because it's your alone, it's easier, but it's not a consensus. So it's important because we are the representative of all communities, as I said before. So it was important to have SMEs, to have large companies, and representing all those sectors which are different and not talking to each other in a traditional way. So yes, I guess it was important to have this. I'm not saying that we need all the time big projects, but in this case, in order to handle with a high vision the problems of security for the development of 5G, I guess it was necessary, yes.
What I'm trying to get you to say is you wouldn't have achieved the same impact without the large community involved.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm leading you. I shouldn't lead the panel members. I should let you make your proposal. We might as well just keep going down the line. If you can pass on the microphone. Okay. We're then slightly different from the order on the slide, but Isil Özkan from Turkcell.
Okay, hola, nice to meet you all. I am Işıl. I am the coordinator for international and national funded projects in Turkcell. Turkcell is the digital operator in Turkey and also operating in other countries too, with 48 million of subscribers. So Turkcell Technology is the R&D company of Turkcell Group. And we are in the CELTIC Next board since a decade. Why we are in the CELTIC Next cluster? Our aim is for sustainable competitive edge, dominate feature trends, activate the ecosystem in Turkey and internationally, and boosting commercial results. Until now, we have completed 5 projects in CELTIC Next, and we have got 5 ongoing projects right now. So if I give some information about the UPSC, It is the acronym for Unleash the Power of SIM. So let's boost the power of SIM. So we had the CELTIC Award of Excellence last year in 2018. It's a really compact consortium besides this flagship projects. Yes, we had 3 countries composed of 7 partners and with budget of 2 million euros. So I will give some brief information about the project. The goal is to implement a software framework that is exposing the security functions of SIM cards, especially for the mobile applications. So why did we do this project? What was the problem? There was a need for the mobile services in order to have the identity and security of data transmission, which is very critical. So we needed to have a secure environment and which is easy to use for especially the mobile application developers. So we used the solution of SIM cards to take the role as a security service provider. In EuPSC, we are facilitating especially the application developers to make easy codes, easy developments, and which are secure also. Why did we use SIM cards? Because SIM cards had already preserved security keys and algorithms for authorizations, authentication, and encrypting. So SIM cards had data storages, CPUs, cryptographic modules, and they were produced in certified factories where credit cards are also produced. And also the local distribution and support network was very important. So as a result, the SIM cards providing ideal environment for security requirements of the mobile services were implemented. In the areas of Turkcell technology, we had some parts about voice over IP communications, mobile commerce, financial transactions, mobile identity, things like that. And as a demonstration, we demonstrated it in remote payment and mobile signature. As a result, with the inspiration from this project, we have implemented our single sign-on product to be used by the customers, and we have modeled our payment systems accordingly. So also these cluster projects have so much potential for new collaborations, helping to shape the future, especially in technology. And we had also the international project management experience in this project. And the know-how transfer was very valuable also. So these are the things that I can tell about EuPSC.
Thank you very much. A fairly comprehensive description. The microphones are a bit sensitive and we're getting an echo. To you, the question is more the opposite of the question to Emmanuel. Did you get the value from the project because it was small? That's one of the conclusions we could get. So,
yes, sometimes small projects may also succeed, not always the big ones. This was the compact one. It is much more easier to coordinate the project with less partners, let's say. It is much more easy to make agile works altogether. So these were the advantages that we had.
Okay, so we're seeing different models here. We're seeing large for consensus and small for efficiency, and medium is in somewhere in between and that. We'll keep moving down the line. Antonio, would you like to tell us your experience?
Sure, thanks, David. Right, so let me just start with the research line that we started almost 1 decade ago, right, regarding network monitoring and quality assurance. We started our participation in CELTIC at that time CELTIC, then CELTIC Next, CELTIC Plus, and now CELTIC Next, by leading a new project that was called Hypnosis, right? Just focused on IP monitoring. We are talking about 2010, right? When I mean we, not only the company where I belong, I mean Indra and Insight, but also the other partners that have come with us across the last decade, because during this last decade we have taken part in 4 different projects, right? Apart from that one on IP monitoring, we evolved our technology and our research in a new project that was called NOTS, which was focused on monitoring OTT networks, right? In addition, a next step beyond OTT monitoring, we went through another new project, what's called Mona Lisa, right? In which, in Mona Lisa, we evolved through quality of experience, right? Not only network monitoring. And now we are immersed in launching a new project focused on monitoring 5G, right? So that is our research line, and all those projects, we have led them in Indra, right? But what I would like to remark is that all or main of the partners that started this activity 10 years ago are nowadays in the last project that we have just launched on 5G. Regarding the impact, just a brief overview of NOTS project, right? I mean NOTS project because we have won for this project the Excellence Award a couple of years ago, a CELTIC Plus Excellence Award, and last year we were awarded with the Eureka Innovation Award, right? So in that project that again was focused on monitoring OTT contents, we achieved over 100 dissemination activities, including more than 70 research papers in main journals and magazines. In addition, we achieved over the exact number is 27 products that were impacted by this project, right? This project was, we had 6 different countries and 20 partners from those countries. So it was a mid on high size project. In any case, those were the main achievements, right? 24 products and in addition 100 dissemination activities. Then, once that project ended, we started another project which is Mona Lisa, which is also in the table of content, in which we evolved that initial architecture for focus just on network monitoring, but a step beyond quality of experience, right? That project, in that project, we have carried out several activities, including around 50 dissemination activities. We have also contributed to 7 standardization bodies, such as VQAG, ITU, TM Forum as well, right? And as a result of this evolution of the project, we also achieved 20 new or improved products, right? So they're basically the main impact of those projects. On one hand, dissemination, on the other hand, a huge amount, in my perspective, of impacted projects, right? Projects that were taken to the industry arena, right?
Very good. Quite an impressive list of numbers of all sorts. But one interesting point in what you said you've developed lasting relationships with partners that have lasted well beyond one project and into many projects. Are these relationships also emerging into the commercial world, or?
Yes, sometimes it depends on the different focus, because in those projects, what we have done, sometimes it is hard to commercialize a whole ecosystem, obviously, because we are having a partner. But from the early beginning, we thought that a good idea for putting this in common and looking for searching business opportunities were to develop certain modules, right? So imagine that we have a module for accessing the traffic, another module for analytics, another module for traffic performance. So in that way, for those specific modules, we have worked together, and we have go beyond that and offer a common product, right?
Very good. Okay, we'll move on down to our final presenter. Jose, do you want to talk from there, or do you want to come here and show your little video?
So as a good Finn, I will disrupt the flow.
Pass the microphone over there.
No,
yeah.
I will play the video.
Yep. If we can work out how we play the video.
I can try to play it.
Oh, you know how to play it.
Yeah, should be. Yes.
Sigmona is the software-defined networking concept in generalized mobile network architectures. It benefits mobile operators because Sigmona's software-defined networking and network functions virtualization architecture lower the initial network investment, energy consumption, and management costs. It also benefits network managers by offering them the flexibility to configure, manage, secure, and optimize network resources to adapt to changing business needs. Sigmona was at the forefront of emerging 5G technology, allowing operators to adapt 5G by themselves without the need to wait for features embedded in vendors' proprietary and closed software environments. The novel LTE 4G network architecture with NFV and SDN were validated with test systems and demonstrated in the Mobile World Congress 2015 and 2016. A spin-off company called EuCNC was created and has boosted operators with novel mobile network architecture. The company has also tested LTE network solutions that are deployable in 3 minutes. The products developed under Sigmona were made 5G ready as a baseline for the forthcoming 5G mobile network and standards. And today, the SDN concepts are widely used in LTE and 5G networks.
Okay. All right. So I think that from Sigmona point of view, the major impact besides 12 PhDs, 14 theses, 46 papers, and so on, is the company. So basically, the startup, which is a clear example of technology transfer. So that with that startup, we can ensure that all the research that came out of the project is being translated into products. So basically, we are employing right now about 8 people. And the good thing is that these people are basically coming directly from the university, plenty of energy, enthusiasm, and so on. So in that sense, we get the right formula out of the project to immediately materialize those deliverables. And I would say that there are companies that they are trying to do this technology transfer, and my experience is that because those big industries, they have a lot of processes. The people that come from the university immediately are absorbed by those processes. They lose enthusiasm. And in this kind of a small company, then it's easy to promote and then keep these people alive and then contribute with real innovative solutions. So some factors that have been helping us in this, of course, like the CELTIC as a framework, which is closer than other EU programs to gather together industry partners, trying to address more tangible problems close to what the industry requires. That's one key aspect, this kind of framework. Then the other factor is probably in the Nordics, the fact that the trust. So basically, we have this sort of trust from the government in terms of support, even giving us licenses. I mean, the thing that most other countries lack the possibility of being its own operator or having its own frequency, that's something that has been boosted our deployment in this kind of environment. So I would say that besides all these papers and prototypes and open source that you can see from the project, I think that this clear result as a company, which then delivers the real technology transfer from the project, is the main impact, in my opinion. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I think there's probably so much in what you've just said that builds on the rest of the statements that we should almost pause a moment and appreciate the point. I think there's something very special in what you said about the close relationship with the national authorities and the support you get from the national authorities. Have the rest of you also experienced the good relationship with the national authorities and the level of support? Would any of you like to comment? They're all nodding positively, but nobody really wants to say anything.
Yes, I mean, our experience with, in particular, with the public authorities of Spain, we are very glad to have the trust of in particular, of the CDTA for Spain, because they have supported us since the beginning that we joined these Eureka projects, right? So that's that's my experience.
No, it's just. It sounded like a little bit of a throwaway comment almost at the end, but I suspect there's a significant value in the ability to exploit the results if the national authorities have almost been involved from the birth of the ideas through the project and then have interest in helping you take the opportunities to exploit them. And I'm just trying to find out if that is the experience of that. It's probably slightly different for you, Emmanuel, because of the size and consensus bit. There is actually a second microphone there somewhere.
So yeah, I can talk especially for the French part, for the national authorities, and they were involved from the beginning. And I guess they were enough convinced that it was a project that is supposed to be a flagship, that they mobilized a lot of efforts in order to find the money, which is a very good point at the beginning. And it was also linked to some initiatives that were in France to modernize the industry. I won't go into the detail of all the stuff, but it was clearly something which was consistent with the industrial policy in France and the advancement of these new topics and the future of security of 5G infrastructure in general. So it was a very good relationship from day one, I should say.
Okay. And Jose, just going back to you, the startup, how much fun was that? Are we on yet?
Yes. So it was the startup was created right after the end of the project, so 2015. So we have been running already for 4 years. The beginning, or like in any startup, is really tough because, as I said, we were getting good people out of the university straight into the company. But then after these people get start to work, then the main problem is the attrition. So basically you cannot pay bigger salaries, and then people with this knowledge is very scarce. So then immediately, as a clear example, right the first year, then 2 of the founders were hired by the big companies. So, and then I had to rebuild again the whole team. So in that sense, it's a tough, challenging, yes. Mainly in this area that the people with that knowledge is not very abundant. So, yeah.
Okay. But I'm also impressed by the timeline, that literally directly from the project you went into startup.
Right, yeah. So, and that's probably linked to the previous question of the relationship with the funding authority, because they, I mean, at least in Finland, is anyone from Business Finland? No? Okay, so I can speak freely. So they are really tough. They are really tough in terms of requirements. So one of the requirements is that they want to see growth. So basically, the key message they gave us is that, okay, you are spending taxpayer money. We need to get a few times the money that you are we are investing as at a payback. So we want to see how this project will translate in growth for the economy and so on. So in that sense, this birth of the company as right after the project was a good example that, okay, we demonstrate to the funding authorities that we are taking them seriously.
So there return on the investment was
exactly
obvious.
Yeah.
Very good. I should open to the floor. Are there any members of the audience who'd like to ask our panel anything? You're not getting out of here until you ask a question. One each. Do we have one? No. Okay, well then we'll keep going ourselves. I'm sort of trying to understand, there are many different models here. For example, in Turkcell, you're obviously not doing a startup. Turkcell is a big organization. Did you make the decision about exploiting the results before the project or after the project? I mean, did you do the project to get the result, or did you decide to exploit it when you saw the result?
In generally, while choosing or while making a project, we are trying to fit the project to our strategies and to our roadmap. In that aspect, security, and of course we are the telco, so we are using SIM cards. So we are taking those things into aspect while making a project. So while choosing also the partners, we are also taking care of feeding the ecosystem nationally and internationally. And after making one project, we continue to making projects with the partners that we succeed. So it makes that before beginning to the project and after the project, we take care of exploitation.
Okay, and also you develop a sort of an ecosystem of partners you like to work with.
Yes, right.
Matti, is that your experience as well?
I mean, you mean, do we plan in a deterministic way for before the projects what we will use at the end? Not sure about that.
Well, your project is definitely different.
No, but I mean, you have directions, you know that you need something, but you don't know if you will perform well, and that's the purpose of research. So sometimes you can exploit the results directly, sometimes it takes time, or you just win knowledge. When you do some de-risking, it's very important for the industry to de-risk the approach of the solution. Sometimes the answer is it's bad. And knowing that it's bad is a very good information, a very useful information. It doesn't mean that you have a product, but it means that you avoid to go in the wrong way. So the value is not only if you have a product, that's what I mean. When you're doing studies and research, so in general, we know why we are doing stuff. So we know why we are in and what we expect from the project. Does it translate into direct products? Depends on your business, by the way, because for Thales' purpose, for instance, we are seeing a lot of systems, or system of systems, so big stuff, and we don't have all the time a specific product in that, but we have the methodologies, the way to approach the systems, and so on. And we are, in the case of Sunlight, we learn a lot about how we will implement slices in the future, for instance. We know already things that maybe our competitors don't know, so it's value for us.
No, I wasn't really trying to suggest that, but on the other hand, you go into the projects looking for something you can use. There was a slight difference between the projects because most of them are bottom up, but your one was actually a sort of a strategic vision and became a flagship project. And that is, again, one of the assets of the CELTIC structure. You can have both the bottom up and the strategic flagship type approach. Marco, in your project, did you determine what you wanted out of the project before the start and then deliver to yourself, or did you get surprised by what you got at the end?
No, essentially it was a project between SMEs, so small, medium companies, and they all knew what was the project, the product they wanted out of the project. What was more uncertainties was in which way it could integrate with other products. So we had that except the academicals that were making research and bringing them into the product, the others had the objective of the products, and then the surprise that some of the products could well integrate into the full system and work together, and also with a good opportunities to go to the market together with a single product without the distinction between one SMEs and the other.
Okay. Antonio, you
Yeah.
look like you want to comment on the same point.
Yeah. Yes, well, in Indra Mindset, we have an innovation model, right? So what does it mean? It is, although it is an open innovation model in which we share, put in common with other companies with common interests, the fact is that from the very beginning, we must define, according to our strategy, we must define a business plan. Right? What does it mean? That we must concrete or at least forecast what kind of product we will develop as a result of that, including the perspective, sales, evolution, all those in the end a business plan, right? In addition, when we present the projects to our public authority and to the CTI, we also include this business plan. So it is double checked somehow, right? So that is why from the beginning we have more or less a clear idea on how to commercialize the research as a result of this project. But it is true that sometimes the result of the project overspan the initial scope. And sometimes, imagine if you plan to develop a module for monitor, I'm not sure, the OTT contents. In the end, perhaps we also go a step beyond, and not only OTT commercial services, such as, I'm not sure, YouTube or whatever, but also or other OTT players. So that means that we expand the initial business plan. But in any case, we define it from the early beginning.
Okay. Please.
Yeah, I think that in the Sigmona case was a bit different because at that time we started in the industry talking about virtualization. I mean, OpenStack and all these kind of things. So in that sense, from the industrial vendors, like the big guys, Nokia and Ericsson, they were wondering, okay, how this will impact the mobile industry, the telecommunications industry. So in that sense, it was for us more like a greenfield. So we were trying to understand that how we can leverage this virtualization, this SDN type of technologies into this mobile area. So in that sense, it was like going into something unknown based on the hype that was behind this kind of computing or ICT aspects. And the end result was quite favorable. So basically, besides the startup and so on, we even filed several patents which have been granted recently. So in that sense, it turns out that that area that we thought was mainly dominated by the big IT players, we as a telco mobile industry, we still have some role to play and how we can benefit with this technology. So in that sense, it was a greenfield which turned out to be quite productive.
Very good. But what we're getting the sense of is that the bottom-up approach of allowing you to decide what it is you want to achieve and push it forward gives you, and the flexibility to adjust your work plan as you go along, is actually turning out to be a very useful tool to each of you and all of you in order to get the results you want for your business and for your advantage. I think I've somehow manipulated you a little to confirm this point a bit. But that's good. But now I'm sort of intrigued about what happens when you then hit the market. Do you refer ever to the identity of the projects or that, or do these projects go ahead to have a life of their own? Does anyone remember CELTIC when they get to the marketplace, or is there an advantage in it? Does it have a brand value for you? Now you have a choice here between hurting my feelings and lying. Okay, I get the impression the answer is not that convenient, yeah.
Well, at least for a startup, we need to use as many references as possible.
Okay.
So
thank you.
So in that sense, the main thing that, for example, we recently are bragging about is this like innovation award that we got recently. Then the fact that as part of this project, then we were the first to talk about SDN in mobile networks. So that's sort of what we use as a competitive advantage as part of the startup. Because the problem with the startup is not like the big companies. You have a product, a roadmap, and so on. The startup works based on what the customer wants. So if the customer wants something, then you need to focus on that and deliver that. Yeah, you don't have roadmaps.
But it helped you establish your credibility.
Exactly. So in that sense, what I was saying is that using this as like a reference, like saying, okay, this startup comes out of a research project in cooperation with these big names, and a project that has won this kind of innovation award. So that gives some credibility for a startup which doesn't have any at this stage.
Okay, Marco, for an organization like yours, how important is it to reassure your customers that your products have a future by being in research activities and collaborative projects?
Yes, I can speak for the SMEs that were in the consortium. Yes, it's difficult to say, it's case by case, but in any case, the display of a collaboration and the possibility to demonstrate use cases and success story, as we will see for the project later on, it's always a plus. So it's always a clear message that the technology that is inside the products is leading cutting-edge technology that comes from something more than small SMEs that tries to do something and to get to the market. In that case, it's always a plus.
Okay. Emmanuel?
Finally, it makes me think something about the marketing and communication in general. If you look at what happened was last year's, a lot of people, and executive people especially, just listening sometimes too much about what is happening in California and GAFA and so on. And sometimes it's useful to say that, hey, remember, we made some research and we were first on this topic years before some others which are coming from US or elsewhere in the rest of the world. So in this sense, it may be useful to have references to show that it happens, that we work on that, we were pioneer on that, and so we are skilled on that, and not everything is coming from elsewhere. So, and my feeling as almost 25 years in this area, is that the importance of the marketing coming from big companies, and especially the GAFAs, is more and more, even on the research side. Even researchers sometimes are talking about this coming from, even if they did something which was better in their research before. So we have to work on that, and we have to use some tools like those type of organization to push and to foster where we are good at. And just taking the example of cybersecurity, for instance, we have very good people skilled in Europe. So most of the time we have the resource here. So it's just a question to use it, and not just to buy things that are coming from elsewhere.
Unless they've been stolen from your startup by a large organization, yes. Okay. Any people want to ask questions yet? Yes, we have one here. Front and center. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Patrick Johnson, and I'm we're part of the coordination of a project within CELTIC Next within eHealth, and we're like 1 year or 2 years in. And my question here is that we have a consortium that contains of 5 countries and several companies and universities and so on. How would you suggest us to keep the project alive, or the community that you have created through the project after the project is done? How would you address that question? How do you work together? Do you take advice and keep that community active?
Well, that probably depends on what the outcome is.
Of course.
Who'd like to take
I can take the first one. I mean, a good way is to have fun together. Yeah. So basically, how we kept our consortium alive is a lot of face-to-face time together, networking, and so on. So now the problem is that I mean, from environmental point of view, traveling is not, I mean, a good thing, but at least to keep and strengthen the consortium, then having this continuous or periodic face-to-face where you have the normal formal meetings, but then after that you go and have a beer with your colleagues. That really is how we keep the consortium strength.
Okay, so the point there is good working relationships. Antonio,
Yeah.
you have made the point about follow-on activities.
Yeah, well, at least what we have done, because we have been working with more or less the same group, the same core group, I mean, inside the projects, about 10 companies during the last nine years. What we did is, you know that all these CELTIC projects, you have a midterm review, right, at the mid of the project, and in the end, a final review, right? So during the midterm review, we made after that meeting, right? What we stop and say, okay, we are right here and we have more or less clear what kind of activities should be carried out to finish the project for the final review, usually during the following 12 months. But at that time, together with the evolution of the technology, we are now aware that most probably we would like to continue beyond the initial scope of this project. And that is why from the midterm review, we have, together with the monthly weekends or perhaps twice or once a quarter or whatever, we start with that new strategy, right, to define the new scope of the new project, because otherwise, if you do not that and you wait until the end of the project, you will not have enough time to confirm or add new partners. Some partners, unfortunately, withdraw, but that is why we did it more or less by the end of by the mid-term of the project, right?
Okay.
I totally agree with my colleagues, and besides that, plenary meetings, yes, those are very important, and especially you should have some socialized dinners after, because in some projects it's very nice to know each other's voice while making a teleconference. So you have to make this networking and socialization in order to boost. And besides that, there are very nice agile instruments that are being used right now, like can I give some brand names? Okay, Trello, like Slack. So those are the instruments that are also very good for communicating.
Okay, so we're building up a list of things. We're going to really answer your question in quality. Emmanuel.
It's interesting because you mentioned ELs. It's your sector. That's it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know that in 5G we try to build a lot of trials with verticals, including ELs. So it happens that in a Sundet project, part of the project built a platform which was used to study the SDN and FV stuff. So this platform is still continuing to welcome some verticals, to make some study and to continue the interoperability tests, the integration tests, and so the study. So it means that some of the depend on the outcome of the project for sure. But if you have something which looks like a platform that can be used in perspective of welcoming evolutions and also other verticals or whatever, it may be useful to think about that during the project.
Marco, do you have anything to add to the collection?
Yes, my suggestion is if the partners have the opportunity to be funded for a version 2 of a second project that extended the objectives with new partners or very few that drops, that's a very good way to keep it ongoing. But of course, this depends also on some external conditions, funding authorities and right time for the continuation of the main objective that needs to be updated to new challenge.
I think I probably should put one caveat in here. Otherwise, the national authorities might object a little. The purpose of this is not just to renew the project for the sake of the project guys being together. The point would be, and I think it's been well summarized here.
I didn't say that.
No,
I didn't suggest.
No, I'm not blaming you on this. It's okay. It's just that I think the best example was during the life of the project, when you identify either further challenges or new opportunities, and you use the good relationships you have to determine a new proposal for how to address those. This is, I think, what we should summarize as the position of the panel. It's not a case of you guys like working together and you should just keep working together. There has to be a clear cost benefit. We've had, Jose has explained clearly the sensitivity, and particularly in Finland, of proving the return on investment. Don't ask for another project unless there's going to be a good return on investment that the national authorities can support. Valerie? Oh, he's got the mic there first. Yeah. Okay.
So, is it on the same topic, actually?
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry, Torbjörn Hjelmberg. So I'm the project manager of the same project as this eHealth, Front eHealth. So we are both from Axians, and of course that's the major company in this consortium. And all the SMEs are now starting to get scared when it comes to the IPRs after the project result is finished, because we could basically steal. In fact, there's tools and processes developed during the project that now we're starting to discuss who will own as the project is finalized in about 13 months from now. Do you have any experience on how to treat that, to keep them cool, so to speak, not that we will steal the complete result and run away with it?
Jose?
Well, basically, we had a clear sort of discussion about IPR management. What we sort of agreed between the partners is that when someone has some idea, then it can talk freely within the partners because of the NDAs that we have a part of the consortium agreement and so on. Try to get the consensus or support from other partners and go together with that IPR. What happens to us is that, okay, I had an idea about usage of SDN on mobility and so on. Then I go and talk to Nokia, Ericsson, hey, I have this great idea. But they were a bit skeptical and then decide, okay, there's nothing behind this because SDN is known and so on. So it turned out that we, at that point, as part of Aalto University, we filed it and we got it granted. And now the thing is that, okay, now you go and talk to the Nokia and Ericsson and then they are interested. How do you solve that? So basically, the thing is that during the project, the idea is to share that as a part of the team and go together into this kind of inventions and IPR. If you don't get such support and you still believe in the idea, then at least after the project, then there should be a clear guidelines how whoever has filed and get the patent granted can license it to the members of the consortium. So I think that the best approach is like follow the consortium agreement, but then before that, then go in good faith, or at least trust your partners, which may be sometimes difficult.
Okay, time is rolling on us. We're consuming the time very quickly. Valerie, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just a comment about IPR issues. Actually, the main principle are included in the CELTIC Framework Agreement and the project agreement, but this is the basis, and you can discuss it further with your partners. And also, I wanted to comment on the idea of having follow-up projects. For sure, it is very interesting, as we have noticed already that quite a number of projects awarded either by CELTIC Awards or at Eureka level were actually follow-up projects, because the consortium was able to work much quicker together because the trust was already established, so they were really able to achieve great results. So having follow-up projects is always a good mean to use the basis and to go much higher in a quicker way. So it's very good idea.
Okay, if I'm correct, we're just about on time at this point. Can I have the slide back, please? Yeah. The only thing I'd like to remind you of before you all leave is that the next CELTIC call is coming up in October, so the opportunity to propose new projects is then. There is, in part of tomorrow's session, the opportunity to make pitches for projects and share ideas, so either come along and make a pitch or come along and listen. And of course, Valerie has already highlighted that immediately after coffee break, we have several high-quality presentations from Telefonica, leading SMEs, and so on, as well as the CELTIC prizes. And we've seen today how valuable those prizes are. So to close the session, can you please join me in saying thank you to our panelists for a very entertaining discussion. Thank you.